DJ Nation fam, what is going on? What is happening? It's your boy Ryan Williams back again for another edition of the DFS Top Low Owned Plays here, the DFS Top Low Owned Plays for Week 15. It's going to be a fun week. Crazy news coming out with Drew Brees starting and what should be just an excellent shootout there in the Superdome with the Saints taking on the Chiefs. Lamar Jackson in a good spot against Jacksonville, Derrick Henry. It's winter's coming, so we know Derrick Henry's going to be in play here for December. So we definitely need those low-owned plays to kind of get some exposure to these big games. Before I get into the plays, just want to thank everybody for rocking with us all year long. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel there. Just hit the subscribe button. If you want to hit the like button too, leave a comment. That's much appreciated. And if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, we do have a giveaway that we are doing for the Fantasy Authority here, giving away a signed Allen Robinson jersey on December 27th. So you definitely want to be a part of that. Just subscribe. We appreciate that. All right, let's get into these plays here. 10 plays as usual, but I will say an honorable mention at the end, I think, probably one, maybe two. But let's start it off. Let's get into quarterback here. Kyler Murray at the top of 7,000 on DraftKings, 8,000 on FanDuel. I think he'll catch a little bit of steam here, but not as much to kind of put him out of the realm of possibility. I mean, like I said, Drew Brees is being back. People want to play Lamar. Jalen Hurts will be popular in the same game. He's cheaper. There's other Pat Mahomes as well. So you're looking at Kyler here going against Philadelphia, and QBs have had rushing success against Philadelphia. Daniel Jones, he went for, I think, 90 and 60 in two of those games. Lamar went over 60. Taysom got 33. And we love that Kyler, he looks healthy now to rush. 13 attempts last week after 15 total attempts in the past 3 games. We know that the secondary is banged up for Philadelphia. Darius Slay is in concussion protocol. He might go and might be rolled in for Sunday, but Rodney McLeod is going to be out. Avonte Maddox is going to be out. So Kyler should have his way here, not only passing, but rushing as well. And at 7,000, he comes in pretty cheap for me there. I even like him on FanDuel too at 8,000. And an interesting stack that I'll talk about later. In that same game, let's go over to running back. That was my lone quarterback this week. But running back, I got a couple guys for you. Starting it off with Miles Sanders, 6,900 on DraftKings, 6,800 on FanDuel. FanDuel, he's an excellent value play. I feel like he will go way overlooked. And people might feel like it's point chasey last week. I mean, had 100 yards against New Orleans last week. That was actually the first 100-yard rushing game versus a New Orleans defense since 2017, which I thought was very, very interesting there. What a stat. But, he played 81% of the snaps last week against Arizona or against New Orleans. And this is not a guy who – he's had big games, right? Like he had the big game against the Steelers when nobody wanted to play him, had a big game last week against New Orleans. Nobody wanted to play him. 3 runs on the season of 70+ yards. And you're looking at the red zone role too, 4-1 when compared to Jalen Hurts. So I think they know that getting Miles Sanders involved is the best way for this offense to put up points. And Arizona can be had on the ground. They're allowing a 4.3 yards per carry there. I think, his role is definitely, and Jalen Hurts being there too, it's affecting guys like Travis Fulgham, Boston Scott, Alshon Jeffrey even, and he's going to be on the field. So love Miles Sanders there in that game. That I love that Arizona and Philly game in general, but I love getting him as kind of leverage as a one-off in builds as well too. Sticking on that same game, let's talk about Kenneth Drake, who's 5,500 on DraftKings, 6,600 on FanDuel, and home favorite here. It's hedge life, right? So if I like playing Kyler, then I gotta consider Drake. Drake might be the lone back this week if we get Chase Edmonds, who's dealing with an injury here. If we get him ruled out, then that should really help Kenneth Drake here see kind of all the work. Been really good since the bye, 100 yards or a touchdown in every game since their bye there. And the red zone work, I talked about this on the DJ Nation pod this week. Since week 10, inside the 20, here are the opportunities there. Drake has seen 28, and then Murray and Edmonds are tied for second with 5 each. And Philadelphia has allowed 13 touchdowns to the running back position. So it's tough to trust Drake. I mean, this was a guy who people drafted in the first round or second round of redraft leagues and really were, kind of left disappointed here for most of the week. And now he's catching steam heading on into these late weeks here for DFS and for the fantasy playoffs. So I like him, especially if Edmonds is rolled out. If Edmonds is in, it gets a little bit tougher to trust. But on a week this week where a lot of people are kind of hunkered down onto their plays on DraftKings at the position, Derrick Henry exposure, the rookie backs, Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins. I really like Drake this week. Let's go to Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson is 5,100, 5,800 on FanDuel. And now I know that this seems weird because Raheem Mostert got rolled in, and Raheem Mostert, I think, is in a decent spot too. But I guess when I was looking into this position a little bit further, well, first of all, Dallas D is awful. People will look at, they put up 18, I think, points it was on DraftKings. Not sure what that equated to on FanDuel, but we're a very popular defense last week going against Cincinnati, and they tried to get Giovanni Bernard in the game early. Had his first fumble and however many snaps it was crazy, and he got benched. And so you're benching Gio Bernard and no Joe Mixon. I mean, these guys aren't going to, get it done, so to speak. But Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert both kind of offer upside. And the reason I'm putting Jeff Wilson in here is just the red zone role. Raheem Mostert, I think he only has 8 red zone opportunities compared to the 20 that Wilson has. Not great. And you're looking at the snaps here over the past 3 weeks. Wilson has 92, Mostert has 96. And, no real 100-yard game that we've seen from Mostert this year. He really, gets it done on limited production. And so that's great. But I think if they're, giving him opportunities, and we'll kind of monitor what they're doing here with Kyle Juszczyk and Jerick McKinnon, because those guys also have significant red zone roles too on this team. But I just think the way that, that it's Nick Mullins here, he's on a short leash. We could see CJ Beathard. Love Brandon Ayuk in this game. He'll be in my building blocks. I think when you're talking about tournaments and leverage at a running back position that is pretty ugly, Jeff Wilson kind of offers some upside there that will go completely under the radar. I mean, this guy will be 2-3% owned probably in tournaments with Mostert being active. So love getting some exposure to him, not going crazy, but getting some exposure. And then another guy that I want some exposure to is Gus Edwards. And Gus Edwards comes in at 4,400 on DraftKings, 5,500 on FanDuel. He's actually priced the same as Mark Ingram, which is kind of laughable, but $400 less than J.K. Dobbins. I think people will just lock in J.K. Dobbins, and I don't think that's a mistake necessarily, but I just look at this Jacksonville team over the last 4 games that are giving up total yards in the rushing game of 224, 131, 206, 107. And so from a team perspective, we know what the Ravens want to do, right? They want to run the football. And if you're not getting exposure to Lamar Jackson in the passing game and his running ability, you're not getting exposure to J.K. Dobbins because maybe his price at 5,900 on both sides kind of just doesn't, do anything for you, then, 4,400 on DK. I mean, Gus Edwards does have a red zone role here. So we like that. And just like I said, Jacksonville is getting torn up. I mean, they're getting torn up on the run left and right. If this game gets out of hand, I could see Gus Edwards getting a lot of work, and he doesn't need a lot of work to kind of pay off. I mean, 2 weeks ago, he had only 7 rushing attempts, went for 100 yards on 7 rushing attempts, which is crazy. Last week, only a couple attempts, but got the 2 touchdowns there. And that's with J.K. Dobbins scoring and Lamar scoring twice. So if they're able to kind of take advantage here, Gus Edwards is really a guy that I'm looking at. Let's get into wide receivers here as I start to wrap this up. And so wide receivers this week, I got Mike Evans first at the top, 6,500 on draft. I got to look at his price again because I think I miswrote that. But he's 6,500 on DraftKings, I do know. And this game is kind of catching steam here, the Atlanta Tampa Bay game. No Ronald Jones this week. And so is Tom Brady going to lean on the pass? And if he's leaning on the pass, I want the guy who has the highest target share on the team and has the red zone role on the team. So you're looking at Atlanta secondary, really haven't been able to stop anybody. We got Denard, who's now out. And so they're going to be running guys that Mike Evans is 6'5", and I think the guys that they're going to be running out don't aren't taller than 6'1" against him. And so he should have his way there. Just, I mean, it sounds silly to say height advantage, but I mean, that is kind of a big thing. Tom Brady could just throw him up. If they get into the red zone there, are they going to run Fournette? Maybe they do, or maybe they just decide that they can pass it to these guys like Evans and Gronk. And Evans has kind of been that guy. I know that, no 100-yard game on the season. Really, the touchdowns have been carrying him, but I mean, touchdowns is what we like, and especially on FanDuel. I just looked now; he's 7,100 on FanDuel. I think that you could definitely talk yourself into playing him if points are going to be scored in this game. I think Mike Evans is definitely involved. Let's go down to some cheap guys. I got two for you. It's Christian Kirk and Russel Gage. I'll talk about Russel Gage actually first. Julio Jones is out, and since the Week 10 bye. Julio only healthy for one game. Gage's snap counts have been 79, 80, or percentages, that is 79%, 88%, 78%, 72%, 32 targets over the past 4 games. I mean, this guy he's just in a great spot to kind of pop off here. And we got Carlton Davis on the other side here for Tampa Bay that should be, guarding Calvin Ridley. And Calvin Ridley, as he struggled kind of in this matchup, I think like 14 is his average here in the past 2 years against the Atlanta team. Russel Gage had some decent games against them, 8 catches and 70 yards in one of them that he had last year. And another one he had, I believe, around 7 catches and maybe 60 yards or something like that. So definitely success against this team that we could look at. And just 4,700 on DraftKings, you're going to have to pay down somewhere. A lot of people will be paying down at tight end. They'll pay down at defense and, try and get some of these 5K and above players at wide receiver. But at 4,700, I really think he's going under the radar. We know that Matt Ryan definitely has, they love throwing the ball. They cannot trust Todd Gurley. They don't have any, Brian Hill they can't trust. So I think Russel Gage really comes in definitely as an interesting play this week. And I will have a ton of exposure to Russel Gage this week. I mean, just 4,700 at wide receiver if he's going to be under. Christian Kirk was my other guy. Now, if I like Kyler Murray, I got to like Christian Kirk here. He's a cheap stack with Murray. There's no, like I said, no Rodney McLeod, tore his ACL. Avonte Maddox will be out. Philadelphia allowing the 7th most fantasy points to the or at all, just fantasy points in general to opposing teams. So if they're scoring points, I gotta like Christian Kirk. Leads the team in depth of target with 12 yards there on his depth of target. And I just think, a lot of people will go to DeAndre Hopkins. And while DeAndre Hopkins should definitely eat, whether Slay is in there or not, just the blow up appeal, like when you're playing a guy like Kyler Murray, who's 8K, and then DeAndre Hopkins, who's 8K as well, that's 16K of your salary. That's a significant margin there. And if, at 8K for a wide receiver, you're really he needs 30 for sure. And we know that Hopkins has not always reached that plateau on the season. He could go out there and get 20 and you're loving that. But like if Christian Kirk takes a long touchdown, he can get to 20 as well at, nearly half the ownership there on DraftKings almost. So love getting Christian Kirk there. Let's talk about tight ends as I round it out here. Mark Andrews is first, 5,500 on DraftKings, 6,800 on FanDuel. Red zone role on the team is kind of, Snead has a significant role there too, but 27% of the red zone share is the 3rd highest team share for the tight end position. In the red zone. So love that. Love that the Jaguars are tied with the Chargers at 2nd and allowing 10 touchdowns to the tight end position. He's a $2,500 discount on Kelsey on DraftKings and just going under the radar. He looked like he was going to be popular, but now that we have, Kyle Rudolph out, Erv Smith, he's my next guy I'll talk about there. Cole Kmet catching some steam. Jared Cook with no Michael Thomas catching some steam, and people want to pay up for Kelsey. So I think this range in the 5K with Andrews and Hawkinson and the other guys here will definitely go overlooked. Just saw 5 for 78 last week. Sounds like the wide receivers will all get activated. Marquise Brown, Miles Boykin, James Proche off of the COVID list here going into the game. But we know that Mark Andrews, he's always in play in good spots for Lamar. And then Erv Smith, 3,600 on DraftKings, 5,400 on FanDuel. The Bears are allowing the 5th most DK points, 4th most FanDuel points to the position. And teams are targeting tight ends the 2nd most. against this Bears defense. There's no Buster Screen this week. Jalen Johnson is questionable, and I just think it helps the passing game as a whole. And you're looking at, Thielen and Justin Jefferson thoroughly being in the mix there. But Erv Smith, he went for 463 and 1 last week with no Rudolph. Again, Tyler Conklin, he outsnapped him a fair amount. But you're looking at that first game for Erv Smith being off an injury there. I think that could kind of change this week. I really think this Erv Smith kid is special, and they try and get him going this week without having to utilize Conklin. And I really do just like the way this shapes up here for Erv Smith. I think he'll be my cash game tight end, but I love him for tournaments as well too, as I just think he'll go overlooked. And 5,400 on FanDuel, I think is a very enticing price tag. So, and then honorable mention, I said I would talk about one, and I think DK Metcalf deserves a mention here. I was going to write him up, but I just don't really have too much interest in that game, really, so to speak, with Seattle and Washington there. I mean, Terry McLaurin in a good spot in and of himself too. I guess if I was doing anything, I would try and game stack that game, but as one-off pieces, I don't really like anything except for maybe Metcalf. McLaurin, yeah, I think you could talk me into him at 6,600, but Metcalf at 8,500, I think is leverage off of guys like Kelsey, leverage off of Derrick Henry, leverage off of Tyreek Hill, leverage off of Calvin Ridley. Really, yeah, I was getting those guys mixed up in my head. But yeah, the Washington defense, as stout as they've been, they've actually allowed wide receiver ones to smash them on this year if you go in and look at the numbers. So we know what DK Metcalf's upside is. We know that Tyler Lockett, and I talked about him on the podcast, and I need to go back on that because I was kind of thinking about the game last week against the Jets and how favorable of a matchup that was for Lockett, and just really didn't come to fruition. But Metcalf has just been doing it week in and week out. I mean, this guy's double-digit DK points in the past couple there. Really hard to, pass up on him if he's going to go overlooked. So just keep him in mind as you're building your teams and looking for leverage spots. I think he's good leverage on one of those other guys mentioned. All right, 18 minutes in. That's usually long-winded for me, but I appreciate you guys rocking with me. It's the Week 15 DFS top low-owned plays here, powered by the Fantasy Authority. Make sure you guys are following the Fantasy Authority on Twitter at FF_authority, following the DGen Nation Pod at DGen Nation Pod on Twitter. And you can follow myself at Ryan_W on Twitter. Make sure you guys are subscribed again to the YouTube channel, doing that Allen Robinson signed jersey giveaway December 27th. All you need to do is be subscribed to the YouTube channel and be eligible to win. I will catch you guys next week for Week 16. It's been a fun year. Go out there Week 15, get that money, and yeah, have fun. We'll see you guys.